cover the merchandise that are on display in this display windows. And we're going to need new awnings. And it's a big investment for us. Can you tell me whether it's worth us making the investment? And the guy was very nice. He said to me, how long do you have to have the awnings up in order to get your money out of them? I said, 5 years. He said, don't do it. I said, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And that's their way of letting us know that before 5 years we would be gone.
Hmm. And had you taken over running the store by then, or was your dad still there?
No, my father really stopped being active in the store in the late 60s. Unfortunately, I had a sister who died, and that got my father for a loop. My brother-in-law, my sister's husband, worked in the store too. His name was Danny Braylove, and he looked like, I don't know if you remember Danny Kaye.
Sure.
He really looked a lot like him. Nicest guy you ever want to meet. Terrible in the store, hated working there, but a nice guy. Everybody loved him, the customers loved him, the people loved him. He was really a pleasant guy, but he just he never had a good day. He must have worked there for 12 years, never had one good day in 12 years. Mm-hmm. He was such a nice guy, you really had to go out of your way to find something not to like about him.
So when did the store finally close?
Closed in February of '73.
And so you basically from the 60s to 73 ran the store?
Yeah.
Okay. And watched it kind of go downhill?
No, it wasn't really going downhill.
Okay.
East Point was built, I guess, in the 50s, and it was people before, it was competition. But it was still, business was still okay. Eastern Avenue, Harlandtown was always competition. But there was still enough business in Sparrows Point to keep us going. And at the end, there was still enough business to keep us going. Bethlehem Steel said they were going to build this furnace, and that was the exact location where the store was. So you couldn't build us this is where we're going to build the furnace. And when they said this is what they were going to do, you didn't really argue with them because you were just wasting your breath. That's what they were going to do.
And they owned the land and the building?
They owned the land, but they owned a 30-day lease.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have kicked us out any time after 30 days. At one point there was an occasion where a fellow had a grocery store over on the north side, and he came to my father and he said, I have a problem. Bethlehem's going to kick me out. And I said, why? You've been there quite a while. And he said, well, they're picking on me. They don't like me for some reason. They're going to kick me out. Could you go to talk to them, because I know you're on good terms with them, and see what they have to say? So my father said, well, I don't think it'll do any good, but I'll talk to them. So he contacted a man named McVickers, who was in charge of the real estate department for Bethlehem Steel, and said, Mike told me that you were terminating a lease on him. He said, that's right. He says, because he hasn't done anything wrong. He says, that's not true. He says, he writes numbers. He says, that's where the profit is in his small grocery store. Writing numbers makes a lot of money for him. He said, and he's been warned 4 times. And we told him after that, that's it. One more time, you're out. Well, he didn't stop. He says, so he's out. But right around there, they had a dry cleaners, they had a gas station. They had just about, everything was, the town was self-supporting.
Except for bars.
No bars, no liquor, nothing. You had to go to Edgemere to get the bar. Edgemere had more than their share of.
Because there was a bar, the first and last stop or something.
Right, the first and last, a place called Maybe's, a Friendly Tap and things. There's no shortage to find bars. Most of the bars had been there for a long time too. They were family-owned businesses also. And right across the street from the bars, as you went out on Northport Road, the bars were all on the right side. On the left-hand side were companies like Nelson and Company and smaller plants. Bethlehem Steel had companies that built small plants along there. They used Bethlehem Steel as their main supplier.
Thompson Steel.
Like Thompson. There must have been like 5 or 6 of them right along there. And one day, my father had a customer. This was, I guess it was in the 40s. The man was a farmer, and he had like 20 acres out on Northport Road near Wise Avenue. And he said, Mr. Caplan, farming's not what it used to be. I'd really like to sell that property. Would you be interested in buying it, 20 acres? Well, I said, I don't know, but I'll think about it, give it some thought. I said about a week later, Mr. McVickers, the guy in the real estate department at Bethlehem Steel, shows up and he says, Mr. Caplan, I understand you're interested in buying this 20 acres out on Northport Road. I said, well, I don't know if I'm interested. He just asked me. I've known him for a long time. And so Mr. McVicker said, Mr. Caplan, that area out there, all along North Point Road, Bethlehem Steel is going to own. And we're going to have like little satellite companies out there that use our products. And if you're interested in keeping your store here, you shouldn't be interested in that piece of property out there. And my father said, what property? In other words, he got the message, if Bethlehem Steel wants something, you better not stand in the way, because they're going to get it.
And so the company had a real estate division that this McVickers ran. Did he run the housing as well as?
That was it. He ran the housing. Anything that wasn't steel production was his venue. He ran everything that wasn't steel production. And they were very powerful. And they controlled where you lived, where you worked, and if you did something that they didn't like, they were the enforcers, you know. There's nothing more than, to drive home a point that you're going to be thrown out of your house, you know, that makes a pretty strong point.
I mean, you talked about in 1946 building a new store.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was it different from the old store?
Well, it was all on one floor. We had like 15,000 feet, and there was a post office that had like, I guess like maybe 1,000 feet in the back of it, and there was a grocery store owned by a man named Fred Rosen, had like 1,000 feet on the side of it. But it's a modern brick building. The fixtures and things like that were all built, custom built for the store. The store itself was very attractive, the fixtures and everything, and it was a very nice business. It was well known. It was probably the biggest store in Baltimore County at that time, because there was no East Point. And all the other stores around were pretty small stores. So we had a pretty large store.
Were you open 7 days a week?
No, well, you can. No stores were open on Sunday.
Okay.
There were blue laws. No retail business at all on Sundays. We were open 6 days a week. We only opened on one night. Friday night we were open until 8 o'clock. And people would ask me, you know, do you mind going out of business? I said, no, because eventually it's going to be 7 day a week business and 7 nights a week business. And it really is pretty tough. It's tough to run a business that way.
And what were the hours of the store?
We were open from 9 till 6.
Okay.
So we used to get there like 8:15 and we'd leave like 6:30.
And when you're taking the streetcar in, it's another hour?
Well, by the time I was there, we didn't use the streetcars.
Okay, you drove in.
Yeah, drove in.
And you'd always lived outside of Sparrows Point?
Yeah, it was like a 45-minute trip.
Okay.
But we had an interesting experience. I guess it must have been in the early 50s. We had our store was on the corner of 8th and D Street, and next to it was a building that had a Providence Savings Bank in it, had a place called the Sweet Shop, which was a sandwich shop, had a barber shop in it, and on the corner they had a place called the G&G Restaurant. That's where at one time there was a chain of grocery stores in the Baltimore area called Eddie's. That's where Eddie started his first store, a guy named Eddie Levy. And eventually he went out of the grocery business and was taken over across the street was a drugstore, G&G drugstore, owned by Herb and Joe Gitka. And they opened a restaurant on the corner of 9th and D Street. So the town really had, if you didn't want to, you didn't have to leave the town. I guess it was nice to get off sometime and go other places. Mm-hmm. But they had a lot to offer.
One thing we talked about earlier is that when you talk to people around here in your residence area, that Sparrows Point is like another universe.
Yeah, they had no idea where it was, how you got there, what was going on there. As far as they were concerned, it was another universe. They never even had the slightest idea of ever going there or seeing what was going on there. At one time, I think Bethlehem Steel paid probably 35% of the taxes collected in Baltimore County. They were tremendous. So it wasn't only the fact that they controlled what was going on in Sparrows Point. There's a lot of political weight in what was going on in Baltimore County and Baltimore City. At one time, I've heard figures mention that they had 33,000. I always heard the figure 35,000. They had a lot of people working down there.
31,000 and the union group in 1959 is about
Yeah.
the figure, plus the management groups and,
Well, when we were driving into Sparrows Point, like 8 o'clock in the morning, all the bars on North Point Road, on the other side, leading away from Sparrows Point, were always busy. And I said, you guys, how come? And, 8 o'clock in the morning, guy says, look, I worked the shift, I got off,
midnight shift.
yeah, I got off 7 o'clock in the morning, so it's like after work, and I
That's
stop off and I grab a beer on the way home. But that was why all the bars were on the right-hand side. As people left, coming in, nobody was doing any drinking. Going out, there was very
Mickey's
relaxing
and
to stop and get a beer.
places like Mickey's and stuff.
Sure, well, Mickey's, guys would buy, Mickey's was a package store. Guys would buy beer and they'd stand out in the parking lot and drink it. But there must have been, I would say, 15 bars from after you left Mickey's all the way out till you got to Wise Avenue. There was no, shortage of bars along there.
And so what was it like for you going into that different universe every day?
It was fine. It was, there was no difference at all. The people were still people. People talked the same, they acted the same, they were interested in the same things. It's just that, and the people who lived in Sparrows Point had no idea where Forest Park was. That was a complete, total strange land to them. Just as the Sparrows Point was complete, total strange land to the people who lived there.
One of the things that some of the stores did was start cashing checks and serving as kind of a bank. Did you ever do that?
Yeah, we cashed a lot of checks, but I think Mickey's and us were about the only place that didn't charge. The idea was to get people in, cash their check, and to buy things. A lot of them were customers anyway. But, the guys would buy socks or buy a pair of shoes or buy a shirt or something like buy underwear. That was a deal to get them. Sometimes we'd have 25, 30 people lined up. And I was always concerned about, why we never get held up. And the theory was from the policemen would be in the store all the time in and out, is that because there's only two ways off of Sparrows Point, North Point Road or across into the section called Edgewater, which was right across the Bear Creek. So anybody, it would be easy to stop them from leaving Sparrows Point. Now, they used to pay the hourly workers on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. At the First National Bank is where they cashed most of the checks. There was
In the town?
in the town. That was at like 5th and D Streets. And they would have two policemen with sawed-off shotguns on porches across the houses across the street from that, in case there would be any attempted robbery or something like that. So it's interesting, you go down there and see this tremendous line, and you see these two cops standing across the street with their shotguns. Then they rebuilt the bank.
And these were private Sparrows Point police officers?
Well, everything was Sparrows Point
Yeah.
police.
Oh.
There was Sparrows Point police, Sparrows Point firemen, nothing from Baltimore County, nothing. Everything belonged to Sparrows Point and Bethlehem Steel. And then when they built a new bank at the same location. They built an indoor bulletproof section, and there would be a cop in there with a sawed-off shotgun, just watching the guys come in and cash all their checks and things like that.
You told a story about trying to collect a bad check through the...
Oh, yeah, a fellow gave us a bad check, and one of the policemen, a fellow named Ray Clemson, was a sergeant. Very nice guy, very friendly. He said, I'll make it good, I'll get him to make it good for you. So he took us to the magistrate's court, which was in session, and he brought the guy in.
And the magistrate's court was at the Sparrows Point Police Department?
It was at the police,
Okay.
right, the police department. And he brought the guy in, and
This was a steel worker, or guy working the mill?
right,
Okay.
and the magistrate says, what's this about? And Clemson was doing all the talking, the policeman, and he said, he gave him a bad check and he won't make it good. And we're going to prosecute him. So the magistrate said, wait a minute, he called me and said, Joe, wait a minute. He says, you can't throw a guy in jail for not making a check good. He says, the guy's liable to turn around and sue. He says, I'll get him to sign a release. And so you'll be out of the clear. If the guy pays you, fine. If he doesn't pay you, there's not a whole lot you can really do about it. So the guy paid us half, and he was happy to get away, and we were happy to get away too, because we had no idea that Clemson was really going to get us in trouble. He was trying to do us a favor, and did us a favor that could have ended up being a big problem. But it turned out well, and we didn't have any problems.
And the magistrate was a Sparrows Point officer or was
No,
it
no, the
county?
magistrate,